What if I told you that you could walk into any room and instantly know who is lying, who is trustworthy, and who is trying to manipulate you? What if I told you that the people who seem most convincing, the ones who appear honest and genuine, could be the very ones hiding the darkest intentions? Most people go through life taking everyone at face value. They believe what people say, trust appearances, and assume good intentions. Then they get betrayed, manipulated, or deceived, and they wonder how they missed the signs. But here is the truth. Every person you meet is constantly broadcasting information about their true thoughts, intentions, and character. They are telling you exactly who they are through hundreds of microsignals that most people never notice. Their body language reveals what their words hide. Their facial expressions betray their real emotions. Their speech patterns expose their deceptions. And once you learn to decode these signals, you will never be fooled again. By the end of this video, you will have a complete system for reading people with extraordinary accuracy. You will understand the hidden language of human behavior. You will recognize deception before it harms you. And you will develop an almost supernatural ability to see through social masks and understand what people are really thinking and feeling. Chapter 1: The 3 Deception Patterns Everyone Uses. Here is what most people do not understand about deception. Everyone lies. Not occasionally. Not just bad people. Everyone. Studies show that the average person lies between 10 and 200 times per day, depending on how you count small social deceptions. But most of these lies are not about major betrayals or criminal intent. They are small distortions, omissions, and social lubricants that people use to navigate their relationships and protect their self-image. However, there are 3 major deception patterns that signal something more serious is happening. These are the patterns that indicate someone is actively trying to mislead you for their own benefit. And if you cannot recognize these patterns, you will be vulnerable to manipulation, exploitation, and betrayal throughout your life. The first pattern is called baseline deviation. Every person has a baseline, a normal way of behaving when they are relaxed and telling the truth. This baseline includes their typical speech rate, their normal gestures, their usual eye contact patterns, and their standard emotional expressions. When someone deviates significantly from their baseline, something has changed in their internal state. They might be lying, but they also might be anxious, excited, or uncomfortable for other reasons. The key is recognizing when the deviation corresponds with specific topics or questions. If someone maintains steady eye contact throughout a conversation, but suddenly looks away when you ask about a specific incident, that deviation is significant. If someone speaks at a consistent pace but speeds up or slows down dramatically when discussing a particular subject, that change tells you something. The mistake most people make is looking for universal signs of deception. They have heard that liars avoid eye contact, so they assume anyone who looks away is lying. But some cultures consider direct eye contact disrespectful. Some individuals are naturally shy or socially anxious. The universal signs approach leads to false conclusions because it ignores individual differences. Baseline deviation is more reliable because you are comparing someone to themselves, not to a generic standard. To establish someone's baseline, you need to observe them during neutral conversation before asking sensitive questions. Notice how they sit, where they place their hands, how often they gesture, how much eye contact they make, and what their facial expressions look like during casual discussion. Then, when you move to more important topics, watch for changes from that established baseline. The second deception pattern is called cognitive load increase. Lying is mentally harder than telling the truth. When someone tells the truth, they simply recall what happened and report it. When someone lies, they have to construct a false narrative, keep track of what they have said, monitor your reactions to see if you believe them, and suppress the truth that keeps trying to surface. This increased mental effort shows up in observable ways. Liars often simplify their stories, leaving out the small details and sensory information that truthful accounts naturally include. They provide fewer spontaneous corrections because they are working from a script rather than memory. Their speech becomes less fluent with more pauses, verbal fillers like and ah, and sentence restarts. Their movements often decrease as their brain directs energy toward maintaining the deception rather than normal gesturing. Some liars become unnaturally still, almost frozen, while others increase restless movements like foot tapping or hand wringing as their anxiety about being caught builds. You can deliberately increase cognitive load to make deception more obvious. Ask unexpected questions that force the person to generate new lies on the spot, rather than relying on a prepared story. Request that they tell the story in reverse chronological order, which is easy with genuine memories, but extremely difficult with fabricated narratives. Introduce contradictory information and watch how they respond. Truth tellers will confidently correct you or show confusion. Liars will often accept the contradiction or try to incorporate it into their story because they are not sure what the truth is. The third pattern is called emotional incongruence. Emotions and expressions should match. When someone tells you about a terrible experience, their facial expression should show distress. When they describe something funny, they should show amusement. When emotions and expressions do not match, something is wrong. The most common form of emotional incongruence is called duping delight. This is when someone feels pleasure about successfully deceiving you, and that pleasure leaks through their attempted expression of whatever emotion they are supposed to be showing. You might see a slight smile when they are supposed to be sad, or a flash of satisfaction when they are supposed to be confused. Emotional incongruence also appears as timing problems. Genuine emotions appear instantaneously and fade gradually. Fake emotions often appear after a slight delay as the person consciously generates the expression they think they should show. They also tend to disappear suddenly, like a light switching off, rather than fading naturally. Another form of incongruence is asymmetry. Genuine expressions appear symmetrically on both sides of the face because they are generated by involuntary neural pathways. Fake expressions are often asymmetric because they are consciously controlled, and most people have better control over one side of their face than the other. Watch for smiles that are stronger on one side, or eyebrow movements that only occur on one half of the face. These three patterns work together to create a comprehensive deception detection system. When you notice baseline deviation, plus cognitive load increase, plus emotional incongruence, you can be highly confident that deception is occurring. Any single indicator might have an innocent explanation. But when multiple patterns align, the probability of deception becomes very high. Understanding these patterns also helps you avoid false accusations. Just because someone seems nervous does not mean they are lying. They might be anxious about being disbelieved, even though they are telling the truth. Just because someone avoids eye contact does not mean they are deceptive. They might have social anxiety or come from a culture with different eye contact norms. Look for clusters of indicators and changes from baseline rather than relying on single signs. Chapter 2. The Facial Expression Decoder System. Your face is an involuntary broadcasting system for your emotions. While you can control what you say and consciously manage some of your expressions, your face constantly produces micro-expressions that reveal your true emotional state before your conscious mind can suppress them. These micro-expressions last between 1/15th and 1/5 of a second. They are too fast for most people to consciously notice, but your unconscious mind registers them and generates intuitions about whether someone is trustworthy. When you learn to consciously recognize micro-expressions, you gain access to information that most people only sense vaguely. The human face can produce more than 10,000 different expressions through various combinations of facial muscle movements. But emotional expressions break down into 7 universal categories that appear across all cultures. These are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, contempt, and surprise. Each emotion has a distinct facial signature that appears the same whether someone is from New York or rural China, whether they are 5 years old or 80. Happiness is the easiest emotion to recognize, but also the easiest to fake. Genuine happiness involves the zygomatic major muscle that pulls the corners of the mouth up, and the orbicularis oculi muscle that creates crow's feet, wrinkles around the eyes. Fake smiles only engage the mouth muscles because the eye muscles are much harder to control voluntarily. This is why genuine smiles are called Duchenne smiles, after the researcher who first identified the difference. When someone smiles at you without engaging their eyes, they are producing a social smile rather than expressing genuine pleasure. This does not necessarily mean they are being deceptive. It might just mean they are being polite. But it tells you that they are not actually experiencing positive emotion in that moment. Sadness appears as the inner corners of the eyebrows rising and pulling together, the corners of the lips pulling down, and the lower lip sometimes pushing up slightly. Genuine sadness is difficult to fake convincingly because the eyebrow movement requires muscles that most people cannot control voluntarily. When someone claims to be sad, but their eyebrows remain in normal position, they are likely performing sadness rather than feeling it. Anger shows as the eyebrows pulling down and together, the upper eyelids raising, the lower eyelids tensing, and the lips pressing together or opening in a square shape. The entire face tightens, and the person often appears to lean slightly forward. Anger is one of the most dangerous emotions to miss because it signals potential aggression. Even brief flashes of anger that someone quickly suppresses tell you that they are experiencing hostile feelings regardless of what their words say. Fear appears as the eyebrows raising and pulling together, the upper eyelids raising to expose the white above the iris, and the lips stretching horizontally. The mouth often opens slightly. This expression makes the eyes appear larger, which is an evolutionary adaptation that allows you to take in more visual information when facing a threat. When someone shows fear during a conversation, they perceive some kind of threat in the interaction. That threat might be you, or it might be something about the topic you are discussing. Either way, their fear tells you that their psychological alarm system has activated. Disgust involves the nose wrinkling, the upper lip raising, and the lower eyelids pushing up. This expression originally evolved in response to bad smells or tastes, but humans also show disgust in response to immoral behavior, offensive ideas, and people they find contemptible. When someone shows disgust while discussing a person or situation, they have strong negative feelings regardless of whether their words are neutral or polite. Contempt is the only asymmetric universal expression. It appears as one side of the mouth pulling up and slightly back. Contempt signals that someone feels superior to and disdainful of whatever or whoever they are regarding with contempt. This is an extremely important expression to recognize because contempt is the single strongest predictor of relationship failure. When someone feels contempt for you, your relationship with them is in serious danger, regardless of how friendly they act on the surface. Surprise shows as the eyebrows arching high, the eyelids opening wide with white showing above and sometimes below the iris, the jaw dropping open, and the forehead wrinkling. Surprise is the briefest of all emotions because it represents your initial reaction before your brain has time to assess whether the surprising thing is good or bad. Within moments, surprise transitions into whatever emotion is appropriate. Pleasure if the surprise is welcome, fear if it is threatening, or anger if it is offensive. The transition from surprise to the secondary emotion is extremely revealing. If someone claims they did not know about something that harms you, they should show surprise when you tell them about it. If they do not show surprise, they already knew. If they show surprise that quickly transitions to fear rather than concern for you, they are worried about consequences for themselves. Beyond the 7 universal emotions, you also need to recognize what are called display rules. These are culturally learned patterns for when it is appropriate to show or hide certain emotions. Different cultures have different rules about emotional expression, and individuals within cultures vary in how much they follow these rules. Some people are highly expressive, showing their emotions clearly and intensely. Others are more controlled, dampening their emotional displays, even when they feel emotion strongly. Neither style is better, but you need to calibrate your reading to the individual. A slight expression from a controlled person might represent the same internal intensity as a dramatic expression from an expressive person. Micro-expressions occur when someone's genuine emotion begins to appear on their face before their conscious mind can suppress it, according to social display rules. You might see a flash of anger that is quickly replaced by a polite smile, a moment of fear that is immediately covered by a neutral expression, or a flicker of contempt that disappears almost before it fully forms. These micro-expressions are like leaks in someone's emotional control system. They reveal what they really feel before they can apply their social mask. Training yourself to spot micro-expressions requires practice because they happen so quickly. Start by studying photographs of the 7 universal expressions until you can instantly recognize each one. Then practice with video at various speeds, gradually working up to real-time recognition. Many people find that after training, they develop an intuitive sense that something is off, even if they cannot consciously identify exactly what expression they saw. This intuition is your unconscious mind registering the micro-expression and sending you a warning signal. Understanding facial expressions also helps you manage your own emotional broadcasting. Once you know what your face reveals, you can make conscious choices about what to show and what to control. This is not about being fake or manipulative. It is about having agency over your own communication rather than letting your face broadcast information you prefer to keep private. Chapter 3. The Body Language Library. While faces broadcast emotions, bodies reveal intentions, attitudes, and power dynamics. The way someone positions their body, uses their hands, occupies space, and moves through the world tells you enormous amounts about their confidence, their comfort level, their interest in you, and their relationship to others in the environment. Body language operates at 3 levels. Macro movements are large, obvious actions, like crossing arms or leaning back. These are usually conscious and under voluntary control. Micro movements are small adjustments, like slight weight shifts or finger movements. These are usually unconscious. And autonomic responses are completely involuntary reactions controlled by your nervous system, like pupil dilation or flushing. All 3 levels provide valuable information. The first principle of body language reading is understanding proxemics, the use of space. Every person maintains invisible boundaries around their body that represent different levels of intimacy. Intimate space extends about 6 to 18 inches from your body. This space is reserved for romantic partners, very close friends, and family members. When someone who does not belong in your intimate space enters it, you experience discomfort and usually move away to reestablish your boundary. Personal space extends from 18 inches to about 4 feet. This is the distance for friendly conversations and social interactions with people you know and like. Social space ranges from 4 to 12 feet and is appropriate for interactions with acquaintances or professional relationships. Public space is anything beyond 12 feet and is the distance maintained between speakers and audiences or between strangers in public settings. When you observe people interacting, notice the distances they maintain. If 2 people are standing closer than their relationship would normally dictate, they likely desire greater intimacy or connection. If they are standing farther apart than normal, tension or discomfort exists between them. When you approach someone and they back away, they are protecting their boundary because they do not want the intimacy that closer distance represents. When someone leans toward you during conversation, they are showing interest and engagement. When they lean away or angle their body away from you while their head remains facing you, they want to leave but are too polite to do so obviously. The orientation of someone's feet and torso reveals their true focus regardless of where their face is pointed. A person might be looking at you and smiling while their body points toward the door or toward someone else in the room. Their body is showing you what they really want or where they really want to be. Blocking behaviors reveal discomfort or disagreement even when someone's words are agreeable. Crossing arms creates a barrier between you and the other person. Placing a bag, cup, or other object between you and them serves the same function. Positioning a laptop or tablet as a shield signals that they feel a need for protection in the interaction. These behaviors do not necessarily mean the person dislikes you. They might be cold, naturally defensive, or uncomfortable with the topic being discussed. But they indicate that some barrier exists, either physical or psychological. Mirroring is one of the most powerful indicators of rapport and agreement. When 2 people are connected and in sync, they unconsciously begin to mirror each other's body positions, gestures, and even breathing patterns. If you are sitting and you cross your legs, a person who is connected with you will often cross their legs moments later. If you lean forward, they lean forward. This mirroring happens completely unconsciously when genuine rapport exists. You can also use mirroring deliberately to build rapport with someone. By subtly matching their posture, energy level, and speaking pace, you signal similarity and create a subconscious sense of connection. The key is to mirror naturally and with a slight delay, so it appears organic rather than obvious mimicry. Hand gestures serve multiple functions in communication. They can emphasize points, illustrate ideas, or reveal stress and discomfort. Open palm gestures with palms visible signal honesty and openness. This is why people instinctively show their palms when they are trying to be believed or when they are surrendering. Hidden hands or hands with palms down signal withholding or dominance. Steepling fingers with fingertips touching but palms apart is a power gesture that confident people use when they are expressing opinions or making decisions. Fidgeting with hands, hair, or objects reveals anxiety or discomfort. The specific fidgeting behavior matters less than the increase in restless movement compared to the person's baseline. Self-touching behaviors like rubbing the neck, touching the face, or adjusting clothing are called adapters. These are self-soothing behaviors that increase when someone is stressed or uncomfortable. The more someone touches themselves, the more psychological discomfort they are experiencing. The neck is particularly important to watch. When someone feels vulnerable or threatened, they often touch or cover their neck. This is an unconscious protective gesture because the neck is one of the most vulnerable parts of your body. Women might play with a necklace or touch the base of their throat. Men might adjust their tie or rub the back of their neck. Posture communicates confidence and status. Expansive postures that take up more space signal high confidence and social dominance. Contractive postures that make someone smaller signal low confidence or submission. When someone walks into a room with their chest out, shoulders back, and head high, they feel confident and want others to perceive them as high status. When someone hunches their shoulders, lowers their head, and minimizes the space they occupy, they feel uncertain or want to avoid attention. The startle response reveals how threatened someone feels. When surprised or frightened, people instinctively protect their vulnerable areas. They might raise their shoulders to protect their neck, pull their arms in to protect their torso, or step back to increase distance from the threat. The intensity of the startle response tells you how threatened they feel. Watching someone's behavior around different people reveals the relationship dynamics. If someone is confident and expansive around most people, but becomes smaller and more submissive around a specific individual, that person has power over them. If someone mirrors one person in a group, but not others, they feel connection or desire connection with that specific person. Pupil dilation is one of the few completely involuntary and uncontrollable signals. Pupils dilate when you see something you find attractive or interesting. They constrict when you see something you find unattractive or unpleasant. This response is controlled by your autonomic nervous system and cannot be faked. Obviously, lighting conditions affect pupil size, but when lighting is constant, pupil changes reflect interest and attraction. This is why professional poker players sometimes wear sunglasses. They are not hiding their eyes as much as hiding their pupils, which would reveal when they get an exciting hand. understanding body language gives you a tremendous advantage in all social interactions because most people are completely unaware of what their bodies are broadcasting. They try to control their words and facial expressions while their bodies tell the true story to anyone who knows how to read it. Chapter 4. The Vocal Analysis System. The human voice carries far more information than the words being spoken. Tone, pitch, volume, pace, and rhythm all communicate meaning that often contradicts or enhances the literal message. Learning to analyze vocal qualities gives you another powerful channel for understanding people's true thoughts and feelings. The first vocal quality to analyze is pitch. Your voice's baseline pitch is determined by the physical size of your vocal cords and the shape of your resonating chambers. But pitch varies with emotional state. Higher pitch indicates increased arousal, which could mean excitement, anxiety, or anger. Lower pitch indicates decreased arousal, which could mean sadness, fatigue, or deliberate control. When someone's pitch rises during a conversation, their emotional intensity is increasing. This might mean they are becoming passionate about the topic, or it might mean they are becoming anxious or upset. When pitch drops, they are either calming down or deliberately trying to appear more calm and in control than they actually feel. Vocal volume also carries meaning beyond simply being loud or quiet. Increased volume can signal confidence, aggression, or a desire to dominate the conversation. Decreased volume can indicate submission, sadness, or an attempt to create intimacy by drawing you closer to hear. Watch for changes in volume more than absolute levels. If someone starts speaking more loudly, they are claiming more power or space in the interaction. If they become quieter, they are either withdrawing or trying to create a sense of confidential sharing. Speech rate reveals cognitive and emotional states. Fast speech can indicate excitement, anxiety, or high energy. Slow speech can signal careful consideration, deception, or low energy. When someone's speech rate increases, they are experiencing elevated arousal for some reason. When it slows down, they are either calming down or putting more cognitive effort into what they are saying. Remember that cognitive load increases during deception. Liars often slow their speech because they are working harder mentally to construct and maintain their false narrative. But people also slow down when they are being very careful about accuracy or when they are discussing complex or emotional topics. Context matters in interpretation. Verbal fillers like ah, and like increase when someone is uncertain, anxious, or constructing what they are saying rather than simply reporting it. Truthful people providing accurate information from memory tend to speak more fluently with fewer fillers. People constructing stories or lying often use more fillers as they generate their narrative. However, some people habitually use many fillers as part of their normal speech pattern. This is why establishing baseline is crucial. An increase in fillers compared to someone's normal pattern is significant. The absence of fillers when someone usually uses many is also notable, possibly indicating they are delivering a prepared or rehearsed statement. Vocal emphasis reveals what someone considers most important in their message. The words they stress are the words that carry the most psychological weight for them. Notice that emphasis changes meaning. The sentence "I did not steal" that money has 7 different meanings depending on which word is emphasized. I did not steal that money emphasizes the speaker. Did not emphasizes the denial. Steal emphasizes the specific action. That emphasizes which money, and so on. When someone emphasizes unexpected words, they are revealing their psychological focus, even if their literal words seem clear. Pauses and silence are powerful communicators that most people overlook. Strategic pauses before answering questions give someone time to think, which might indicate they are constructing a response rather than simply recalling truth. Pauses before specific words can signal discomfort with those words or uncertainty about using them. Long pauses might indicate someone is experiencing strong emotion that they are trying to control before speaking. Silence after you have spoken reveals how someone is processing your message. Immediate response suggests they were preparing their answer while you were still talking rather than truly listening. A pause before responding might indicate they are carefully considering what you said or that they are uncertain how to respond. Excessive silence suggests strong emotion, disagreement, or confusion that they are not expressing verbally. Vocal quality changes with stress. When stressed, the muscles in your throat and chest tighten, which affects your voice's resonance and smoothness. A person experiencing stress often sounds slightly strained, with less vocal richness and more breathiness or raspiness than normal. Their voice might also shake or crack if emotion is particularly intense. These changes are largely involuntary and difficult to control completely. Even people who are skilled at maintaining composed facial expressions and body language often reveal stress through vocal quality. Breathing patterns affect speech and reveal emotional states. Rapid, shallow breathing that produces shorter sentences indicates anxiety or elevated stress. Deep, full breathing that supports longer sentences indicates calmness and confidence. You can actually hear the difference in how someone's breath supports their voice. Listen for where someone takes breaths during speech. Natural breath points occur at grammatical boundaries, like the end of sentences or major clauses. Breathing in unusual places might indicate anxiety or cognitive load as the person runs out of air before completing thoughts because their breathing is disrupted. Laughter and vocal affect reveal authentic versus performed emotions. Genuine laughter is rhythmic and involves specific vocal patterns that are hard to fake convincingly. Fake laughter often sounds more like a performance than an involuntary response. The same is true for crying, sighs, and other emotional vocalizations. Speech patterns reveal personality, background, and current mental state. Highly educated people tend to use more complex sentence structures and larger vocabularies. People under stress or cognitive load tend to use simpler language. Cultural and regional background affects speech patterns in predictable ways. When someone's speech pattern suddenly shifts to become much simpler or much more formal than their baseline, something has changed in their psychological state. Understanding vocal analysis allows you to gather information during phone conversations when you cannot see the other person. It also gives you a way to verify or contradict what you are seeing in someone's face and body. When all channels of communication align, you can be confident in your reading. When they conflict, you know something more complex is happening beneath the surface. Chapter 5. The Personality Decoding Matrix. People are not random in their behavior. Each person has a relatively stable personality structure that influences how they think, feel, and act across situations. Learning to rapidly assess someone's core personality gives you the ability to predict their behavior, understand their motivations, and adapt your approach for maximum effectiveness. Modern personality psychology has converged on a 5-factor model that captures the main dimensions of human personality. These factors are called the Big Five, and they are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Every person falls somewhere on the spectrum for each of these traits, and together they create a unique personality profile. Understanding where someone falls on these dimensions tells you an enormous amount about how they will behave in various situations. Openness reflects how interested someone is in new experiences, ideas, and perspectives. High openness people are curious, imaginative, and comfortable with ambiguity and change. They enjoy abstract thinking, creative pursuits, and unconventional approaches. Low openness people prefer familiarity, tradition, and concrete thinking. They like established routines, practical approaches, and clear right answers. You can identify someone's openness level through their interests and conversation preferences. High openness people discuss ideas, possibilities, and abstract concepts. They ask what-if questions and enjoy exploring different perspectives. Low openness people discuss facts, practical matters, and concrete situations. They focus on what is rather than what could be. Neither high nor low openness is better. They simply represent different approaches to processing information and engaging with the world. But knowing someone's openness level helps you communicate more effectively. High openness people respond well to novel ideas and creative approaches. Low openness people prefer proven methods and traditional approaches. Conscientiousness reflects how organized, disciplined, and goal-oriented someone is. High conscientiousness people are reliable, detail-oriented, and follow through on commitments. They plan ahead, meet deadlines, and take responsibilities seriously. Low conscientiousness people are more spontaneous, flexible, and casual about obligations. They adapt easily to changing circumstances and don't stress about organization or planning. You can spot conscientiousness levels through behavior patterns. High conscientiousness, people arrive on time or early, keep organized spaces, and follow through on what they say they will do. Low conscientiousness, people are often late, maintain cluttered spaces, and sometimes fail to follow through on commitments, not because they are malicious, but because they don't prioritize organization and planning. Understanding conscientiousness helps you set appropriate expectations. High conscientiousness people will judge you harshly for lateness or disorganization because these things matter deeply to them. Low conscientiousness people will be more forgiving of flexibility and spontaneity. Extroversion reflects where someone gets their energy and how they prefer to interact socially. Extroverts gain energy from social interaction and external stimulation. They are talkative, assertive, and seek out social opportunities. Introverts gain energy from solitude and internal processing. They are quieter, more reserved, and find extensive social interaction draining even when enjoyable. You can identify extroversion level very quickly through social behavior. Extroverts initiate conversations, speak more, and seem energized by group settings. Introverts speak less, listen more, and may seem tired or overwhelmed after extended social interaction. The key insight is that introversion is not shyness or social anxiety. Introverts can be socially skilled and enjoy interactions. They simply find them effortful and need alone time to recharge. Extroverts feel bored and restless when alone for too long and seek out stimulation and company. Adapting to someone's extroversion level improves your interactions dramatically. Extroverts appreciate enthusiastic conversation, quick responses, and social energy. Introverts appreciate space to think, deeper one-on-one conversations, and respect for their need for quiet time. Agreeableness reflects how much someone prioritizes social harmony and others' needs versus their own interests. High agreeableness people are cooperative, empathetic, and concerned with maintaining good relationships. They avoid conflict, accommodate others' preferences, and try to help people. Low agreeableness people are more competitive, direct, and focused on their own goals. They are comfortable with conflict, advocate for their own interests, and make decisions based on logic rather than concern for others' feelings. Identifying agreeableness helps you understand someone's motivations and predict their behavior in conflicts. High agreeableness people will often go along with plans they don't prefer to avoid disappointing others. They will sacrifice their own interests for relationship harmony. Low agreeableness people will advocate directly for what they want and are not particularly concerned if others are disappointed. Neither style is better. High agreeableness creates social warmth, but can lead to being taken advantage of. Low agreeableness creates clear boundaries, but can come across as cold or selfish. Understanding someone's agreeableness level helps you interpret their behavior accurately. When a high agreeableness person says they are fine with whatever you decide, they might genuinely be flexible, or they might be suppressing their real preference to avoid conflict. When a low agreeableness person criticizes your idea, they are not trying to hurt you. They are just being direct about their assessment. Neuroticism reflects emotional stability versus reactivity. High neuroticism, people experience emotions intensely and struggle with anxiety, stress, and negative emotions. They worry frequently, take things personally, and have difficulty bouncing back from setbacks. Low neuroticism, people are emotionally stable, resilient, and not easily upset. They maintain equilibrium under stress and don't dwell on negative experiences. Spotting neuroticism levels helps you calibrate your expectations for someone's reactions. High neuroticism people will have stronger emotional responses to events that low neuroticism people barely notice. They need more reassurance and support during stressful times. Low neuroticism. People might seem unfeeling to high neuroticism people because their emotional reactions are so much more muted. Understanding the Big Five gives you a framework for rapidly assessing people you meet and adjusting your approach accordingly. Within minutes of interaction, you can usually estimate where someone falls on these dimensions and use that knowledge to communicate more effectively and predict their behavior more accurately. Beyond the Big Five, there are other personality frameworks that provide useful insights. The Dark Triad consists of 3 personality traits that predict manipulative and antisocial behavior. These are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Narcissism involves grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. Narcissists believe they are special and entitled to special treatment. They dominate conversations, take credit for others' work, and become hostile when criticized or when they don't receive the attention they believe they deserve. Identifying narcissists early protects you from their manipulation and exploitation. They are initially charming and impressive, but ultimately care only about their own interests. They will use you as long as you are useful and discard you without remorse when you no longer serve their purposes. Machiavellianism involves strategic manipulation and exploitation of others for personal gain. Machiavellians are skilled at reading people, building alliances, and using social dynamics to advance their interests. Unlike narcissists, who need attention and admiration, Machiavellians are content to operate behind the scenes as long as they are gaining power or advantage. Machiavellians are harder to spot than narcissists because they are more subtle and strategic. They rarely reveal their true intentions and are skilled at appearing trustworthy while actually pursuing selfish agendas. Watch for patterns of broken promises, selective truth-telling, and people around them who have been used and discarded. Psychopathy involves lack of empathy, shallow emotions, and disregard for social norms or others' rights. Psychopaths can be charming and seem normal, but they feel no genuine emotional connection to others and have no conscience about harming people when it serves their interests. True psychopaths are rare, but they cause disproportionate harm because they are completely unconstrained by empathy or guilt. They are often attracted to positions of power where they can control others and pursue their interests without accountability. Recognizing Dark Triad traits protects you from some of the most dangerous people you will encounter. These individuals are not just difficult, they are actively harmful and will damage you if given the opportunity. The key is recognizing the patterns early and protecting yourself through boundaries and distance rather than trying to change or help them. Chapter 6. The Context Analysis Framework. Understanding individuals is crucial, but people do not exist in isolation. They exist within contexts that shape their behavior in powerful ways. The same person will act completely differently depending on the situation, their role, the power dynamics, and the social norms that apply. Learning to analyze context gives you the ability to predict behavior more accurately and understand why someone might be acting out of character for their usual personality. The first element of context analysis is role identification. Every person plays multiple roles in their life: parent, employee, friend, customer, expert, student, and so on. Each role comes with expectations, norms, and scripts for appropriate behavior. When you encounter someone, identifying which role they are currently occupying helps you predict and interpret their behavior. A person who is warm and nurturing at home might be aggressive and competitive at work, because those are the behaviors their different roles require. Understanding someone's role also reveals their constraints. An employee who seems evasive might be restricted by company policy about what they can disclose. A friend who suddenly becomes formal might be constrained by the presence of their boss or parent. The role they are playing determines which behaviors are available to them. Power dynamics fundamentally shape social interaction. Every relationship and situation has a power structure, whether explicit like manager and employee, or implicit like one person needing something from the other. Power affects how directly people communicate, who speaks first, whose opinions carry more weight, and what behaviors are acceptable. The person with less power typically shows more accommodating behavior, more careful word choice, and more monitoring of the powerful person's reactions. The person with more power typically shows more relaxed behavior, more direct communication, and less concern about others' reactions. When you observe interaction, identify who has power and who lacks it. This helps you interpret behavior that might otherwise seem confusing. A person who seems excessively agreeable might simply be in a low power position. Someone who seems dismissive might be exercising their power rather than revealing their personality. Social norms are the unwritten rules that govern behavior in specific contexts. Every culture, subculture, organization, and social group has norms about appropriate behavior. What is normal and acceptable in one context might be offensive in another. Understanding the relevant social norms helps you interpret whether someone's behavior is typical for the context or genuinely unusual. Professional settings have norms about formality, emotional expression, and interaction patterns that differ dramatically from social settings. Family gatherings have norms that differ across cultures and individual families. Online interactions have their own norms that differ from face-to-face communication. When someone violates social norms for their context, it tells you something important. They might be unaware of the norms because they are new to the environment. They might be deliberately violating norms to assert dominance or individuality, or they might be so emotionally activated that they cannot maintain normal behavioral control. Situational stress affects everyone's behavior. Even the most stable and positive person will show stress responses when under sufficient pressure. Understanding what stressors someone is facing helps you interpret behavior that might seem out of character. Financial stress, relationship problems, health concerns, work pressure, and major life transitions all affect how people behave. Someone who is normally patient might become irritable when dealing with chronic pain. Someone who is usually honest might shade the truth when facing financial desperation. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you understand motivations and predict future behavior. Audience effects describe how behavior changes based on who is watching. People act differently when they are alone versus in front of others. They also act differently depending on the specific audience. Someone might behave one way in front of their spouse and completely differently in front of their friends or coworkers. Watch for changes in behavior when the audience changes. If someone becomes more aggressive when friends are present, they are performing for that audience. If someone becomes warmer when their boss appears, they are adapting to that specific observer. These changes reveal what they believe different audiences expect or reward. Cultural context provides crucial interpretive framework because cultures vary dramatically in communication styles, emotional expression, time orientation, and social obligations. What seems rude in one culture might be normal directness in another. What seems warm in one culture might be intrusive in another. Major cultural dimensions include individualism versus collectivism, which affects whether people prioritize personal goals or group harmony. Direct versus indirect communication, which affects whether people say what they mean explicitly or expect you to read between the lines. High versus low power distance, which affects whether hierarchy and authority are emphasized or minimized. And monochronic versus polychronic time orientation, which affects whether people treat time as linear and schedules as rigid, or whether they view time flexibly and relationships as more important than schedules. Misjudging someone because you are applying the wrong cultural framework leads to serious misunderstandings. What you interpret as dishonesty might be face-saving behavior in a culture that values indirect communication. What you interpret as coldness might be respect for personal boundaries in a culture that values privacy. Historical context matters for understanding individuals. Every person has a history that shapes their current behavior. Past trauma creates sensitivities and defensive patterns. Past success creates confidence and expectations. Past betrayals create suspicion and guardedness. You often cannot know someone's full history, especially when meeting them initially. But when behavior seems disproportionate to the current situation, history is usually the explanation. Someone who reacts with intense anger to a minor criticism might have a history of being severely criticized. Someone who seems irrationally suspicious might have been betrayed in the past. Understanding context does not mean you excuse harmful behavior or allow people to mistreat you because they are stressed or constrained by their role. But it does mean you interpret behavior more accurately and make better predictions about whether the behavior reflects someone's character or their circumstances. When context changes, behavior often changes dramatically. A person who seems difficult in one context might be completely pleasant in another context where different norms apply or different stressors are present. Chapter 7. The Deception Detection Protocol. Now that you understand the foundational elements of reading people, let us focus specifically on detecting deception. This is one of the most valuable skills you can develop because deception is everywhere. In business, negotiations, relationships, and daily interactions, people conceal, distort, and fabricate information constantly. Most deception is not successfully detected because people look for the wrong signals or misinterpret the signals they observe. Professional interrogators and security personnel use specific protocols that dramatically increase deception detection accuracy. You can apply these same methods in your daily life. The first principle is establishing baseline before asking important questions. Remember, you are looking for deviations from someone's normal behavior. You cannot identify deviation unless you know what normal looks like for that specific individual. Start any important conversation with neutral topics that are not threatening or controversial. Discuss the weather, traffic, or casual topics while carefully observing the person's baseline behaviors. Notice their eye contact patterns, their gesture frequency, their speech rate, where they place their hands, how much they move or remain still. This baseline observation only takes a few minutes, but dramatically improves your accuracy in detecting later changes. Once you have established baseline, you move to the information gathering phase using strategic questioning. Ask open-ended questions that require detailed answers rather than yes or no questions that can be easily rehearsed. Who, what, when, where, and how questions elicit more information and create more cognitive load than closed questions. Request specific details including sensory information. What did you see? What did you hear? What was the weather like? Truthful accounts naturally include sensory details because the person experienced the event and encoded these details in memory. Fabricated accounts often lack sensory details because the person is constructing rather than remembering. Ask unexpected questions that force the person to generate new information rather than relying on a prepared story. If someone has rehearsed a deceptive narrative, they will answer expected questions smoothly, but struggle with unexpected ones. Request that they recount events in reverse chronological order. This is easy with genuine memories because memory does not depend on sequence. But it is extremely difficult with fabricated stories because lies are typically constructed in chronological order, like a narrative. Breaking that narrative structure creates enormous cognitive load for a liar. Introduce false information and watch how they respond. Tell them something incorrect about the timeline or details and see if they accept it or correct you. Truth tellers will confidently correct factual errors because they know what really happened. Liars often accept false information because they are not sure what the truth is or they try to adjust their story to incorporate your false information. While asking questions, watch for the deception indicators discussed earlier. Baseline deviations, increased cognitive load, and emotional incongruence. But remember that any single indicator can have innocent explanations. Look for clusters of multiple indicators appearing together. Also, look for the timing of indicators. If stress behaviors appear when you ask about a specific topic and disappear when you move to different topics, that specific topic is where deception or anxiety exists. Statement analysis is a powerful technique that examines the language people use rather than their nonverbal behavior. Liars reveal themselves through specific language patterns even when their body language is well controlled. Pronouns reveal psychological distance. Liars often avoid using first-person pronouns like I and my when describing events because they are trying to distance themselves psychologically from their false narrative. They might say, "The car was driven home," instead of "I drove the car home." Listen for missing pronouns and unusual language constructions that sound awkward because the person is avoiding direct association with their claimed actions. Verb tense shifts can indicate deception. When recounting past events, truthful people consistently use past tense because they are describing something that happened. Liars sometimes slip into present tense because they are constructing the story in the moment rather than recalling it from the past. Specificity and vagueness patterns matter. Truthful accounts typically include clusters of specific details in some areas and natural vagueness in others. You remember central actions clearly, but might be vague about peripheral details. Liars often show the opposite pattern. They might be vague about central elements because they did not actually experience them, but they fabricate specific details in areas they think will make them believable. Distancing language reveals discomfort with certain topics or claims. Liars might refer to a weapon as that thing, or a person by name, rather than using relationship terms like my friend or my wife. This psychological distancing helps them manage the discomfort of lying. Conviction statements reveal confidence versus uncertainty. Truth tellers make clear declarative statements because they are certain about what happened. Liars often include qualifiers and hedging language. I think, maybe, probably, as far as I recall. These qualifiers give them escape routes if their lies are challenged. Unnecessary details or justifications often indicate deception. When people tell the truth, they report what happened without excessive explanation because they are not worried about being believed. Liars often add unnecessary justifications or details because they are trying to convince you and manage their own anxiety about being caught. Listen for statements that feel over-explained or that include justifications for normal behaviors. Memory gaps and conveniences should trigger suspicion. Real memories have gaps and includes details that might be inconvenient to the person's current goals. Fabricated stories are often suspiciously complete, with every detail supporting the desired narrative and nothing contradicting it. The polygraph principle applies even without a machine. Polygraphs measure physiological arousal, not lying directly. They work on the principle that lying creates stress, which produces measurable physiological changes. You can observe the same stress responses without equipment by watching for signs like increased breathing rate, visible in chest or shoulder movement, swallowing, or dry mouth behaviors like lip licking, changes in skin color, either flushing or pallor, increased sweating visible on forehead or upper lip, voice changes including pitch elevation or shakiness. and increased adapters like touching face or neck. These arousal indicators do not prove lying because people also feel stress when telling difficult truths or when they fear being disbelieved. But they tell you that something in the conversation is creating stress, which directs your attention to that specific content. The comparison question technique that polygraph examiners use can be adapted to regular conversation. Ask questions you know the truthful answer to, and observe the person's behaviors when answering truthfully. Then compare those behaviors to their responses to questions where you suspect deception. The difference in behavior between known truth and suspected lies is more revealing than any single behavior in isolation. After gathering information through strategic questioning, you analyze consistency. Check for internal consistency within the person's account. Do all the details fit together logically? Check consistency between verbal and nonverbal channels. Do their words say one thing while their body says something else? Check consistency across time. If you can ask the same questions on different occasions, do they tell the same story or do details change? Truthful accounts remain consistent over time and across retellings. Deceptive accounts tend to evolve as the person forgets exactly what they said previously or adds new fabrications. When you have strong suspicion of deception, but not definitive proof, you can use confrontation techniques strategically. Present evidence gradually rather than all at once, watching how they adjust their story as each new piece of evidence appears. Offer face-saving alternative explanations that make it easier for them to admit truth. You probably just forgot, or maybe you misunderstood, becomes psychologically easier to accept than admitting deliberate lying. But use these techniques ethically. The goal is discovering truth and protecting yourself from deception, not manipulating or coercing confessions. Never use deception detection to harm others or violate their privacy unreasonably. Chapter 8. The Micro-Behavior Analysis System. Beyond the major signals of body language and facial expressions, there exists an entire world of micro-behaviors that most people never consciously notice. These tiny movements, fleeting expressions, and subtle changes reveal enormous amounts of information about what someone is thinking and feeling in real time. Learning to spot and interpret these micro-behaviors gives you an almost unfair advantage in reading people because they are nearly impossible to control consciously. Micro-behaviors operate below the threshold of most people's awareness. They happen too quickly and too subtly for conscious management. This makes them more reliable than macro behaviors, which people can control and manipulate. When someone is trying to deceive you or hide their true feelings, they focus on managing the obvious signals. They control their facial expression, monitor their body language, and choose their words carefully. But the micro behaviors continue broadcasting truth because the person is not even aware they are producing them. Eye-accessing cues reveal cognitive processing in real time. When people think, their eyes move in specific patterns that correspond to different types of mental activity. These patterns are not perfectly universal, but they are common enough to provide useful information when you observe them consistently in an individual. When someone looks up and to their right, they are typically constructing visual images, creating mental pictures of things they have not actually seen. When they look up and to their left, they are typically recalling visual memories, accessing images of things they have actually seen. When they look horizontally to their right, they are typically constructing sounds. creating mental audio of things they have not actually heard. When they look horizontally to their left, they are typically recalling sounds, accessing audio memories of things they have actually heard. When they look down and to their right, they are typically accessing feelings and emotions. When they look down and to their left, they are typically engaging in internal dialogue, talking to themselves mentally. The key word here is typically. These patterns reverse for some left-handed people, and some individuals have different patterns altogether. But if you observe someone consistently and notice patterns in their eye movements, those patterns give you insight into their cognitive processes. If someone claims to be recalling an event they witnessed, but their eyes consistently move to construction positions rather than recall positions, they might be fabricating rather than remembering. Pupil responses reveal interest and arousal beyond what people consciously want to communicate. Pupils dilate when you see something interesting, attractive, or arousing. They constrict when you see something uninteresting, unattractive, or disturbing. This response happens in milliseconds and is completely involuntary. When you are speaking with someone and their pupils dilate, you know they find what you are saying interesting or stimulating regardless of what their words or expression might indicate. When their pupils constrict, you know they are having a negative reaction, even if they are nodding and smiling politely. Professional card players know this principle well. When someone gets a good hand, their pupils dilate with excitement. Skilled players watch opponents' pupils more than their faces, because pupils cannot lie. Blink rate changes with cognitive and emotional state. Your baseline blink rate is relatively stable, usually around 15 to 20 blinks per minute. But this rate increases significantly when you are stressed, lying, or processing difficult information. Cognitive load makes you blink more frequently. Watch for sudden increases in blink rate when someone is answering specific questions or discussing particular topics. This tells you that topic is creating mental effort or stress, even if the person appears calm otherwise. Conversely, intense focus decreases blink rate. When someone is completely absorbed in what you are saying or deeply engaged with their own thoughts, their blink rate drops. This can help you identify when you truly have someone's attention versus when they are just pretending to listen. Nostril flare is a subtle anger indicator that appears before more obvious anger signs. When anger begins to build, your breathing rate increases to prepare your body for potential conflict. This increased breathing causes your nostrils to flare slightly. Most people never notice this signal, but once you start watching for it, you will see it frequently. Nostril flare tells you that anger is building even when the person's face remains calm and their voice remains controlled. This early warning allows you to adjust your approach before the anger escalates to more obvious and potentially destructive levels. Lip compression reveals stress, disagreement, or suppressed emotion. When people press their lips together tightly, they are literally holding something back. They might be suppressing words they want to say, controlling emotional expression, or experiencing stress they are trying to hide. The tighter the compression, the more intense the suppressed emotion or disagreement. If someone's lips compress while you are speaking, they disagree with what you are saying even if they are nodding. If their lips compress before responding to your question, they are carefully controlling what they are about to say rather than responding spontaneously. Jaw tension appears when someone is stressed, angry, or exerting mental effort. The jaw muscles are among the strongest in your body, and they tighten involuntarily under stress. You can see jaw tension as a slight bulging of the muscles at the angle of the jaw, or you might notice teeth clenching or grinding. Chronic jaw tension often indicates someone is dealing with ongoing stress, even if they appear calm on the surface. Temporary jaw tension during specific parts of conversation tells you those moments are particularly stressful or challenging for the person. Finger drumming and foot tapping reveal impatience, anxiety, or pent-up energy. These repetitive movements help discharge nervous energy that builds during stressful or boring situations. They also indicate that the person wants to be somewhere else or doing something else. When finger drumming or foot tapping begins or increases, the person's tolerance for the current situation is decreasing. They are becoming impatient or anxious and may soon attempt to end the interaction. Self-touch patterns reveal specific anxieties and discomforts. Where someone touches themselves tells you which area of concern is activated. Touching the mouth or covering the mouth relates to speech anxiety. The person might be worried about what they are saying or concerned about saying too much. Rubbing or touching the eyes relates to something they have seen or something they wish they had not seen. Touching or covering the ears relates to something they heard or something they wish they had not heard. Rubbing the neck, especially the back of the neck, indicates frustration or stress. The person feels pressured or burdened. Touching the chest or throat relates to emotional reaction or vulnerability. The person is having strong feelings they are trying to manage. Hand-wringing or finger-picking indicates high anxiety and internal conflict. The person is literally wrestling with themselves mentally. Vocal microbehaviors include subtle changes in pitch, tone, and rhythm that reveal emotional states. Pitch increases at the end of statements, turning them into questions, reveal uncertainty. The person is seeking validation or approval rather than making confident assertions. Vocal fry, that creaky sound at the end of phrases, often indicates the person is trying to sound authoritative or certain, but may actually be uncertain. Volume drops at the end of sentences suggest the person is losing confidence in what they are saying or hoping their statement will not be challenged. Rhythm disruptions, where someone's normal speech cadence breaks down, indicate cognitive load or emotional activation around specific content. The smoothness of speech reflects the smoothness of mental processing. Breathing pattern changes are among the most reliable indicators of emotional state because breathing is controlled by your autonomic nervous system and responds automatically to stress. Shallow, rapid breathing indicates anxiety or stress activation. The person's fight or flight response is engaging. Deep sighing indicates frustration, resignation, or emotional release. The person is dealing with difficult emotions. Breath holding or very controlled breathing indicates the person is trying to maintain emotional control and may be on the verge of losing it. Sharp intake of breath indicates surprise, realization, or preparation to speak. The person has just thought of something significant. Micro expressions of contempt are particularly important to recognize because contempt is toxic to relationships. The contempt expression is a slight raising of one corner of the mouth, often accompanied by a slight narrowing of the eyes on the same side. This asymmetric expression appears for just a fraction of a second, but reveals that the person feels superior to and disdainful of whatever or whoever they are regarding. When you see contempt flash across someone's face during interaction with you, that person does not respect you regardless of how polite their words are. This relationship is in danger and requires direct addressing of the underlying disrespect, or it will deteriorate further. Micro expressions of fear reveal that someone perceives threat even when they are trying to appear confident. Brief widening of the eyes, raising of the eyebrows, and slight opening of the mouth betray fear before the person can suppress it. If you see fear flashes when someone is supposedly negotiating from a position of strength, they actually feel vulnerable despite their confident words. Micro-affirmation signals show agreement and connection even when someone is maintaining a neutral expression. Slight nodding, brief smiles, softening around the eyes, and subtle leaning forward all indicate positive reception of what you are saying. These signals tell you to continue your current approach because it is working. Micro-rejection signals show disagreement, discomfort, or negative reception even when someone is being polite. Slight head shaking, brief frowns, tension around the eyes and mouth, and subtle leaning back all indicate negative reception. These signals tell you to adjust your approach because your current direction is not working. Pacifying behaviors increase when stress increases. People engage in self-soothing touches and movements to calm themselves when they feel uncomfortable. The specific behavior matters less than the increase in frequency. Watch someone's baseline level of pacifying behaviors during neutral conversation. When these behaviors increase during specific topics, those topics are creating stress regardless of what the person's words indicate. Displacement activities are actions that seem irrelevant to the current situation. Suddenly organizing papers, adjusting clothing, or attending to objects when these actions are not necessary. These behaviors indicate internal discomfort that the person is managing by redirecting attention to physical actions. Understanding and recognizing micro behaviors transforms your ability to read people in real time. You gain access to a constant stream of information about their true reactions and internal states. This allows you to adjust your communication dynamically, respond to concerns before they are voiced, and recognize deception or discomfort immediately. Chapter 9. The Interrogation Technique Adaptation. Professional interrogators have spent decades developing techniques to extract truth from people who are motivated to deceive. While you are not conducting criminal interrogations in your daily life, many of these proven techniques can be ethically adapted to help you understand truth in business, relationships, and important conversations. The first interrogation principle that applies broadly is controlling the environment. Interrogators know that environmental factors affect how much information someone reveals and how confident they feel. You can apply this principle ethically in important conversations by choosing where and when discussions happen. If you need to have a difficult conversation where you want honest answers, choose an environment that favors your goals. Meet in a space where you are comfortable and they are slightly less comfortable. This might mean your office rather than theirs, or a neutral location rather than their home territory. Time the conversation when you are rested and prepared, but they might be tired or less prepared. Late in the day after a long workday, people have less mental energy for maintaining deceptions. Control the seating arrangement if possible. Sitting directly across from someone creates an adversarial dynamic. Sitting at a 90-degree angle feels more conversational and less confrontational. Avoid having barriers like desks between you and the other person, as barriers make people feel safer in withholding information. The strategic use of silence is one of the most powerful interrogation techniques. Most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence in conversation and will rush to fill it. Interrogators ask a question and then simply wait in silence. The suspect feels pressure to keep talking and often reveals information they intended to withhold. You can use this same technique in any conversation where you want more information. Ask your question and then stop talking. Maintain neutral but attentive body language and eye contact. Do not rush to fill the silence or move on to another topic. The other person will almost always continue talking to resolve the uncomfortable silence. Often, the most valuable information comes in this additional talking after the initial answer. The person reveals information they did not intend to share because they are trying to manage their anxiety about the silence. Building rapport before challenging is standard interrogation practice. You cannot extract information from someone who sees you as an enemy. Interrogators spend significant time building connection and finding common ground before moving to accusatory or challenging questions. Apply this principle by starting important conversations with genuine connection and positive interaction. Find topics of agreement or shared interest. Show that you understand their perspective and constraints. Demonstrate that you are trying to solve a problem together rather than attacking them. Once rapport is established, people are much more willing to be honest even about difficult topics because they trust that you will receive the information fairly. The contrast principle makes confessions seem less severe by comparison. Interrogators might suggest that the suspect committed a much worse crime than they actually did. When the suspect denies the worst crime, admitting to the lesser actual crime feels like a relief by comparison. In regular conversations, you can use this principle by acknowledging that the worst-case interpretation would be very serious, but you are open to hearing their explanation. I am sure you are not deliberately trying to harm the project, so help me understand what happened. This gives them a face-saving way to admit mistakes without feeling like they are confessing to malicious intent. The good cop, bad cop technique works by creating contrast between two interrogators. One is harsh and accusatory, while the other is sympathetic and understanding. The suspect naturally allies with the good cop and reveals information to that person. You can create this dynamic even alone by framing your questions to create an ally relationship. Other people think you did this intentionally, but I think there might be more to the story. Can you help me understand your perspective? This positions you as their ally against those other critics, making them more willing to share honestly with you. The evidence funnel technique involves revealing information gradually rather than all at once. Interrogators start with general questions and slowly introduce specific evidence. Each time the suspect lies or omits information, they are confronted with evidence that contradicts their statement. This makes their credibility deteriorate, and eventually they realize that lying is pointless because you already know the truth. Use this technique when you have information that someone does not know you have. Start with open questions that give them the opportunity to volunteer information. As they omit or distort facts, gradually introduce the evidence you have. Watch their reaction to each new piece of information. If they begin volunteering information they previously withheld, they are now being more honest. The theme development technique involves creating a narrative that makes the undesirable behavior seem understandable or justified. Interrogators might suggest that anyone in the suspect's situation would have done the same thing, or that the victim somehow provoked the behavior. While you obviously want to avoid encouraging actual wrongdoing, this principle applies to making it psychologically easier for someone to admit mistakes or problems. Frame the situation in terms that preserve their self-image. You were under tremendous pressure and made a decision quickly. Or the information you had at the time made that choice seem reasonable. This makes admission less threatening to their ego. The forced choice technique presents two alternatives as though they are the only options, both of which involve admission. Did you take the money because you needed it for your family, or because you were angry about not getting promoted? Either answer is an admission of taking the money. In regular conversations, you can use this more ethically to move past denial into explanation. We can assume this was an oversight, or we can assume it was deliberate, which is more accurate. This forces acknowledgement that the event happened while allowing them to characterize it in the least damaging way. Minimization and maximization are complementary techniques. Minimization involves downplaying the seriousness of behavior to make admission easier. This was just a mistake that anyone could make. Maximization involves emphasizing how serious the situation is to motivate cooperation. This situation could become a major legal problem unless we get the full truth now. You can adapt these techniques by adjusting your framing based on whether you want to make someone feel safe admitting something, or whether you want to emphasize the importance of honesty. The cognitive interview technique developed for investigative purposes can help extract accurate information from people who want to be helpful. Ask them to recreate the context in their mind. Close your eyes and picture where you were. What could you see? What sounds were around you? Request that they recount everything without editing, even if details seem irrelevant. Tell me everything you remember, even small things that might not seem important. Ask them to recount from different perspectives. What would someone standing across the room have seen? Request reverse order narration. Start from the end and work backward through the events. These techniques work with genuine memories, but are extremely difficult to maintain with fabricated stories. The accusation timing matters enormously. Interrogators do not lead with accusations. They build evidence and inconsistency first, then make accusations when the person has lost credibility. In conversations, avoid accusing someone of dishonesty too early. First, establish what they are claiming through questions. Then introduce contradictory information. Allow them to recognize that you have caught them in inconsistency before you directly challenge their honesty. The refusal to be dismissed technique prevents someone from escaping a difficult conversation. Interrogators calmly return to unanswered questions, no matter how many times the suspect tries to deflect. You can use persistence ethically by simply returning to your question when someone deflects or changes the subject. I want to hear about that. But first, I need you to answer my question about this specific situation. Pleasant persistence communicates that you will not be distracted from getting the information you need. Chapter 10. The Relationship Dynamic Decoder. Every relationship, whether personal or professional, operates according to patterns that the participants rarely consciously recognize. These patterns determine who has power, how conflicts are managed, what topics can be discussed, and what behaviors are acceptable. Learning to decode relationship dynamics helps you understand not just individuals, but the systems they operate within. The first dynamic to identify is the power structure. Every relationship has a power dynamic, though it might not be formal or obvious. Power can derive from multiple sources, including formal authority, expertise, resources, social status, information access, or personal charisma. In some relationships, power is balanced with both parties having relatively equal influence. In others, power is clearly asymmetric, with one party having significantly more control and influence than the other. Identifying the power structure helps you predict behavior and understand motivations. The person with less power will be more accommodating, more careful with their communication, and more attentive to the powerful person's reactions and preferences. The person with more power will be more direct, make more demands, and pay less attention to the other person's needs and preferences. Power is not static. It can shift during interactions and over time. When someone begins to challenge power dynamics by becoming more assertive or less accommodating, they are attempting to rebalance power. How the more powerful person responds to this challenge reveals a great deal about the relationship's future. If they accommodate the challenge, power is redistributing. If they punish the challenge, the power imbalance is being reinforced. The communication pattern reveals the relationship's health and characteristic ways of managing conflict. Healthy relationships demonstrate reciprocal communication, where both parties speak and listen relatively equally. They ask each other questions, build on each other's ideas, and show interest in each other's experiences. Unhealthy relationships often show one-sided communication, where one person dominates conversations while the other primarily listens. Or they show parallel monologue where both people talk, but neither really listens to the other. The conflict management style predicts whether problems will be resolved or will fester and damage the relationship. Some relationships use direct confrontation, where disagreements are addressed openly and explicitly. Others use avoidance, where conflicts are never directly discussed, but might be expressed through passive-aggressive behavior or withdrawal. Some use compromise seeking, where both parties look for middle ground solutions. Others use power-based resolution, where whoever has more power simply imposes their preference. None of these styles is universally better, but they must be compatible between relationship partners. When one person wants direct confrontation and the other practices avoidance, the relationship will experience chronic tension as each person's style frustrates the other. The boundary structure defines what is shared and what is private, what topics are discussable, and what is off limits. Clear boundaries create psychological safety because both parties know what to expect. Unclear or violated boundaries create anxiety and conflict. Some relationships have rigid boundaries with many topics and areas that are strictly private. Others have permeable boundaries where almost everything is shared and discussed. Neither extreme is ideal. Healthy relationships typically have flexible boundaries that allow intimacy while respecting individual privacy. Watch how people respond when someone approaches a boundary. Do they clearly communicate the boundary, or do they just feel violated without explaining? Do they respect others' boundaries, or do they push past them? These patterns reveal whether the relationship can maintain healthy separation alongside connection. The role distribution shows who is responsible for what functions in the relationship. In work relationships, roles might be formally defined, but even there, Informal roles develop around who makes decisions, who manages emotions, who initiates difficult conversations, and who maintains harmony. In personal relationships, roles often form unconsciously. One person becomes the responsible one, while the other becomes more spontaneous. One person manages emotions, while the other focuses on practical matters. One person pursues connection, while the other manages distance. Problems arise when role distribution is unbalanced, or when people feel trapped in roles they did not choose. If one person is always responsible for initiating connection and planning shared activities, they will eventually feel resentful that their effort is not reciprocated. If one person is always managing emotions and smoothing conflicts, they will burn out from the emotional labor. The dependence level indicates how much each party needs the relationship. When dependence is balanced, both people value the relationship similarly and have similar amounts to lose if it ends. This creates equality regardless of other power dynamics. When dependence is imbalanced, the person who needs the relationship more has less power regardless of other factors. They will tolerate more negative behavior because they cannot afford to leave. The less dependent person can make more demands because they have less to lose. Changes in dependence level shift relationship dynamics dramatically. When someone develops alternatives to a relationship through new job offers, new social connections, or increased resources, their dependence decreases, and they often begin asserting themselves differently. The reciprocity pattern shows whether exchanges are balanced or one-sided. Healthy relationships demonstrate rough reciprocity over time. Both parties contribute, both parties benefit, and neither feels exploited. The specific exchanges do not have to be identical. One person might provide emotional support, while the other provides practical help. But both should feel the relationship is fair. One-sided relationships, where one person consistently gives more than they receive, will eventually deteriorate unless the giving person has other motivations, like obligation or fear, that keep them in the relationship despite unfairness. Watch for reciprocity not just in obvious exchanges, but in attention, emotional labor, accommodation, and support. The trust level determines how much vulnerability is possible and how much information must be guarded. High trust relationships allow honesty, admission of mistakes, and expression of needs without fear of exploitation or judgment. Low trust relationships require constant guardedness and strategic information management. Trust is built slowly through consistent reliability, honesty, and demonstrated care for the other person's well-being. It is destroyed quickly through betrayal, exploitation, or revealed deception. Once broken, trust is extremely difficult to rebuild because the wounded party has learned they need to protect themselves. The attachment style, particularly in close personal relationships, shapes interaction patterns powerfully. Secure attachment creates confidence that the other person will be responsive and available, which allows healthy independence alongside intimacy. Anxious attachment creates constant need for reassurance and fear of abandonment, which can appear as clinginess or demands for constant contact. Avoidant attachment creates discomfort with closeness and preference for independence, which can appear as emotional distance or inability to commit. When two people have incompatible attachment styles, their natural behaviors trigger each other's anxieties. The anxiously attached person pursues more contact, which makes the avoidantly attached person withdraw more, which increases the anxious person's pursuit in a painful cycle. The validation pattern shows whether people feel seen and understood in the relationship. Healthy relationships provide consistent validation where both parties feel their thoughts, feelings, and experiences are acknowledged and valued. Invalidating relationships involve dismissing, minimizing, or ignoring what someone thinks and feels. Chronic invalidation is emotionally damaging and creates either angry rebellion or complete shutdown. Watch whether people validate each other before disagreeing. "I understand why you feel that way, and I see things differently" is very different from "you should not feel that way." The first validates feelings while disagreeing with conclusions. The second invalidates the feeling itself. Understanding relationship dynamics helps you see beyond individual behaviors to the systemic patterns that generate those behaviors. A person who seems unreasonably anxious might be responding rationally to an invalidating relationship pattern. Someone who seems cold might be protecting themselves in a relationship where vulnerability has been punished. Effective intervention often requires addressing the pattern rather than just the individual behavior. Chapter 11. The Rapid Assessment System. In many situations, you need to quickly assess someone you just met without time for extended observation. First meetings, brief encounters, and time-pressured situations require rapid yet accurate assessment. Professional profilers have developed systems for making quick judgments that are surprisingly accurate. These systems work by focusing on the most informative signals and using pattern recognition rather than analyzing every detail. The first rapid assessment factor is the introduction presentation. How someone presents themselves in the first 30 seconds reveals their self-concept and their goals for the interaction. Confident people make steady eye contact, offer firm handshakes, speak clearly with good volume, and use open body language. They are communicating competence and status. Uncertain people show more hesitant eye contact, offer weaker handshakes, speak more quietly, and use more closed body language. They are communicating deference or anxiety. Aggressive people might show excessive eye contact that feels like staring, crushing handshakes, loud voices, and invading personal space. They are asserting dominance immediately. Each pattern tells you how this person sees themselves and how they want you to see them. It also tells you what to expect in the interaction. The introduction content matters as much as style. Listen to what someone emphasizes when introducing themselves. Do they lead with their professional role, their family connections, their achievements, or their interests? Whatever they emphasize is what they consider most important about their identity. Someone who immediately tells you their job title and company values, status, and achievement. Someone who tells you about their family values, relationships, and connections. Someone who tells you what city they are from values their roots and background. The questions someone asks tell you what they care about and what framework they use to understand people. Someone who asks what you do for work is status and achievement oriented. Someone who asks where you are from is relationship and connection oriented. Someone who asks what brings you here is present moment and context oriented. Clothing choices communicate intentional messages about identity and values. Professional formal clothing suggests the person values status, follows rules, and likely works in a traditional corporate environment. Casual, comfortable clothing suggests they value practicality over impression management. Expensive branded clothing suggests they value status symbols and want others to recognize their wealth or taste. Unusual or artistic clothing suggests they value creativity and individuality. While you should not judge someone's character by their clothing, you can gather information about their values, their current role, and what image they are attempting to project. Grooming level indicates conscientiousness and current mental state. Well-groomed people who clearly invest time in appearance tend to be higher in conscientiousness. They care about details and what others think. Poorly groomed people might have lower conscientiousness, or they might be dealing with depression or overwhelming stress that prevents them from maintaining appearance standards. Energy level and animation reveal current state and characteristic temperament. High-energy people with animated expressions and gestures tend toward extroversion and positive emotionality. Low-energy people with minimal expression and gestures tend toward introversion, or might be currently depressed or exhausted. Watch whether energy level is consistent or whether it spikes around certain topics. Consistent energy tells you about temperament. Variable energy tells you about interests and engagement. The opening, conversation topic they choose reveals their social skills and their perception of the situation. Skilled social operators choose topics that are appropriate for the context, likely to build connection, and easy for the other person to engage with. Socially awkward people might choose topics that are too personal, too fast, too controversial for the situation, or difficult to respond to. Someone who immediately launches into complaints or negative topics is either socially unskilled or is testing whether you will join them in negativity. Response patterns to your conversational offers tell you about their social interest and emotional intelligence. Do they ask follow-up questions about things you mention, or do they just wait for their turn to talk? People who ask genuine follow-up questions are interested in connection. People who just deliver monologues are interested in being heard, but not in hearing you. Do they notice and respond to your emotional state, or are they oblivious to your signals? Emotional intelligence appears as responsiveness to your subtle cues. Low emotional intelligence appears as missing obvious signals of boredom, discomfort, or interest. The rapport-building speed reveals social skill and intention. Skilled manipulators often build rapport very quickly through excessive charm, finding multiple commonalities and creating a sense of special connection unusually fast. This can feel flattering, but should also trigger caution. Genuine rapport usually builds more gradually. Ordinary people with good social skills build rapport at a moderate pace, finding some common ground without forcing it. Socially anxious or less skilled people build rapport slowly or struggle to build it at all. Status signaling behaviors reveal how they see themselves in relation to you. High status behaviors include speaking first, asking questions rather than answering them, interrupting others, taking up more physical space, and showing relaxed body language. Low status behaviors include waiting to be spoken to, answering questions but not asking them, allowing interruption without protest, minimizing physical space, and showing tense body language. Equal status interactions show balanced turn-taking, mutual questions, equivalent space usage, and matched body language openness. Watch whether someone's status signaling matches the actual hierarchy. If they are interviewing for a job but display high status behaviors, they might be overcompensating for insecurity, or they might be unusually confident. If they are the senior person but display low status behaviors, they might have an unusual leadership style, or they might lack confidence despite their position. Humor style reveals values and emotional patterns. Self-deprecating humor suggests humility or possible low self-esteem. Observational humor about absurdities suggests intelligence and creativity. Aggressive humor that targets others suggests possible hostility or social dominance strategies. Collaborative humor that builds on others' contributions suggests good social skills and generosity. Referential humor that requires inside knowledge suggests desire to create in-groups and out-groups. Notice what topics someone jokes about and what topics they treat seriously. This reveals what they consider important versus trivial. Storytelling patterns show how they construct meaning and what they want you to think about them. Someone who tells stories where they are always the hero might be narcissistic or insecure. Someone who tells stories where they learned lessons from mistakes shows healthy self-reflection. Someone who tells stories focused on other people might be generous or might have weak sense of self. Pay attention to the emotional arc of their stories. Do stories end with triumph, with humor, with learning, or with victimhood? This reveals their characteristic interpretation of life events. Boundary testing behaviors appear early in many manipulative relationships. Someone might make a mildly inappropriate comment or request to see if you object. If you let it pass, they escalate. This is not paranoia. It is a real pattern that manipulators use to identify compliant targets. If someone crosses a boundary in early interaction, watch carefully whether they apologize and adjust when you object, or whether they dismiss your concern and continue. The second response reveals their true character. Decision-making style appears even in minor choices during first meetings. Where should we sit? What should we order? Do they make decisions quickly or slowly? Do they seek your input or decide unilaterally? Do they stick with their choice or keep reconsidering? These patterns in small decisions predict how they will handle larger decisions. Attention to detail versus big picture focus appears in conversation. Detail-oriented people notice and mention specific facts, precise numbers, and fine distinctions. Big picture people discuss general patterns, overall meanings, and connections between ideas. Neither is better, but recognizing which type you are dealing with helps you communicate in ways they will find natural. Calibration to audience shows social intelligence. Skilled communicators adjust their style based on who they are talking to. They match energy levels, vocabulary sophistication, and topic choices to their audience. Poor communicators use the same style with everyone, regardless of whether it is appropriate. Someone who calibrates their communication to you is demonstrating social skill. Someone who seems unaware of whether their style matches the situation either lacks social awareness or does not care about connecting effectively. Stress response patterns appear even in low-stress first meetings. Some people respond to any uncertainty or challenge with visible anxiety. Others remain calm until stress is quite high. Some become more talkative when nervous, while others go silent. These patterns in mild stress predict their responses to serious stress. Exit behaviors are as revealing as entry behaviors. How does someone end the conversation? Do they clearly signal their intention to leave, or do they just fade away awkwardly? Do they make commitments about future contact or leave things vague? Do they seem relieved to escape or reluctant to end the interaction? The exit tells you whether the interaction met their needs and whether they want continued connection. Chapter 12. The digital behavior decoder. Increasingly, your first contact with people happens through digital channels. Email, text, social media, and video calls all create different communication contexts that both hide and reveal information. Learning to read digital behavior gives you assessment capabilities in the modern communication landscape. Written communication removes many nonverbal channels but creates other revealing patterns. The first indicator in written messages is response timing. Immediate responses suggest high engagement, availability, or possible anxiety about the interaction. Delayed responses might indicate low priority, careful consideration, or deliberate power assertion. Consistent response patterns tell you about someone's communication style. Inconsistent patterns, where someone usually responds quickly but delays around specific topics, tell you those topics create discomfort or require more careful management. Message length and detail level reveal engagement and communication preferences. Long, detailed messages suggest someone who thinks in depth, values thoroughness, or might be over-explaining due to anxiety. Short messages suggest efficiency preference, lower engagement, or possibly avoidance. Matched length, where someone mirrors your message length, suggests good social calibration. Mismatched length, where their messages are consistently longer or shorter than yours, suggests different communication preferences or different investment levels in the interaction. Formality level indicates how someone views the relationship and context. Very formal language, with proper grammar and complete sentences, suggests traditional professional orientation or social distance. Very casual language, with abbreviations and minimal punctuation, suggests informality preference or desire to create friendly connection. Changes in formality level are particularly revealing. If someone starts formally but becomes casual over time, they are becoming more comfortable. If someone becomes more formal, they are creating distance. Emoji and punctuation use reveals emotional expression style and age cohort. Generous emoji use suggests emotional expressiveness and typically younger users. Minimal emoji use suggests restraint, or typically older users. Specific emoji choices reveal emotional state. Happy faces obviously suggest positive emotion, but watch for overuse, which might indicate forcing positivity. Excessive punctuation, like multiple exclamation points, suggests high emotion or emphasis. Lack of punctuation suggests casualness or possibly carelessness. Subject matter focus shows priorities and current preoccupations. Someone who consistently steers conversation to certain topics is preoccupied with those areas. Someone who avoids certain topics that would naturally arise is managing boundaries or hiding something. Grammar and spelling quality indicate education level, conscientiousness, and current attention level. Consistent, high-quality writing suggests education and care. Consistent, poor quality suggests less education or less concern with impression management. Deteriorating quality within a message might indicate fatigue, emotion, or rushing. Question patterns reveal curiosity and social interest. People who ask many questions are curious and socially engaged. People who ask few questions are either less interested or more self-focused. The depth of questions reveals how much they want to know you. Surface questions about facts suggest casual interest. Deeper questions about feelings and motivations suggest genuine interest in understanding you. Self-disclosure level and reciprocity show trust and social skill. Appropriate self-disclosure that roughly matches your disclosure level suggests good social calibration. Excessive disclosure too early suggests poor boundaries or manipulation through forced intimacy. No disclosure, even when reciprocal, suggests guardedness or social difficulty. Digital communication timing patterns reveal lifestyle and priorities. Someone who emails at 3 in the morning every day either works night shifts or has insomnia. Someone who never responds on weekends values work-life separation. Someone who responds immediately at all hours might be extremely engaged or might have poor boundaries. Social media presence and behavior reveal self-image and values. Heavy social media users tend to be more extroverted and value social connection. Light users tend toward introversion or privacy preference. Content someone posts reveals what image they want to project. Constant achievement posts suggest need for validation through accomplishment. Personal reflection posts suggest introspection. Political posts suggest those issues are central to identity. Humorous posts suggest desire to entertain. Complaint posts suggest negativity or need for sympathy. The gap between curated online presence and reality can be enormous. Someone might project success while struggling privately. Someone might project happiness while experiencing depression. Look for incongruence between what someone projects online and what you observe in other contexts. Interaction patterns on social media reveal relationship dynamics. Who comments on whose posts? Who likes whose content? Who ignores whom? These patterns map social networks and relationship investment levels. Profile construction choices reveal self-concept and impression management goals. Professional profile photos suggest career orientation. Casual photos suggest approachability, priority. Group photos suggest relationship focus. Solo achievement photos suggest individual accomplishment focus. Provocative photos might suggest attention-seeking or boundary issues. Profile descriptions tell you what someone considers most important about themselves. Long, detailed descriptions suggest need to be fully understood. Short, minimal descriptions suggest privacy preference or confidence that you will figure them out. Video call behavior reveals additional dimensions that text lacks but different from in-person interaction. Technical setup quality indicates conscientiousness and resource level. Professional background and good lighting suggest preparation and resources. Messy background or poor lighting might indicate lower resources or lower concern with impression. Camera angle reveals some body language, but not all. Watch what you can see of posture, gesture, and facial expression. But recognize that careful users position cameras strategically to show only what they want visible. Eye contact patterns differ in video calls because looking at the other person means looking at the screen, not the camera. Looking at the camera creates the appearance of eye contact for them, but means you are not looking at them. This creates unusual dynamics where traditional eye contact rules do not apply cleanly. Multitasking during video calls is easier to hide than in person, but still detectable. Watch for gaze direction away from screen, typing sounds, or delayed responses that suggest divided attention. Digital deception has unique patterns because the medium affects how people lie. The lack of immediate face-to-face accountability makes some people more willing to deceive digitally. The permanent written record makes others more careful digitally. Statement analysis principles apply to written digital communication. Watch for the same linguistic patterns discussed earlier, including pronoun avoidance, verb tense shifts, excessive detail or suspicious gaps, conviction qualifiers, and unnecessary justifications. Response delays to specific questions can indicate deception. If someone responds immediately to most questions, but takes much longer to respond to a specific question, that question creates cognitive load. Privacy management reveals what someone wants, known versus hidden. Private social media accounts suggest boundary awareness or concern about judgment. Public accounts suggest comfort with visibility or desire for wide audience. Selective privacy, where some things are public and others restricted, suggests strategic impression management. Friend and follower patterns show social strategy. Someone who friends everyone has either poor boundaries or is networking aggressively. Someone with very selective friend acceptance values privacy and curation of their social circle. Chapter 13. The Manipulation Recognition System. Some people do not just conceal truth. They actively manipulate your perception, emotions, and decisions to serve their interests. Recognizing manipulation techniques protects you from exploitation. These techniques are well documented in psychology research and sales training. Once you know the patterns, they become obvious. The first manipulation technique is reciprocity exploitation. Humans feel obligated to return favors and gifts. Manipulators give you something, often something you did not ask for, then leverage the obligation you feel to get something larger in return. Salespeople offer free samples, free trials, or gifts knowing that recipients will feel pressured to buy. Manipulative individuals do unsolicited favors, then act hurt when you will not do what they want in return. The key to resisting reciprocity manipulation is recognizing that you did not agree to an exchange. An unsolicited gift does not create genuine obligation. You can appreciate the gesture without feeling you must reciprocate disproportionately. Commitment and consistency exploitation uses your desire to be consistent with past statements and actions. Once you have agreed to something small, manipulators escalate requests, knowing you will want to remain consistent with your initial agreement. They get you to state a position or value, then frame their larger request as consistent with that statement. The defense is recognizing that circumstances change, and consistency with past minor commitments should not trap you into major commitments you do not want. Social proof exploitation leverages your tendency to follow what others are doing, especially when uncertain. Manipulators manufacture or exaggerate social proof to pressure your compliance. Everyone is buying this. This is the most popular option. All your colleagues already agreed. Real social proof can provide useful information. Manufactured social proof is manipulation. Question whether the claimed social proof is accurate and whether it should influence your decision, even if accurate. Authority exploitation uses symbols and claims of expertise to bypass your critical thinking. People defer to authority figures and experts. Manipulators present themselves as authorities or invoke authority figures to make you comply without questioning. They use titles, credentials, impressive jargon, confident tone, and status symbols to appear authoritative even when they lack genuine expertise. The defense is recognizing that authority must be relevant and verified. Someone might be a genuine expert in one area, but not in the decision you are making. Someone might project authority without having genuine expertise. Question credentials and think critically regardless of claimed authority. Scarcity exploitation creates urgency through real or artificial scarcity. Limited time offers. Last one available. Opportunity disappearing soon. Scarcity activates loss aversion and impairs rational decision-making. Real scarcity provides genuine information. Artificial scarcity is manipulation designed to prevent you from thinking carefully or comparing options. The defense is recognizing that genuine opportunities rarely require immediate decision without time for consideration. If someone is pressuring you to decide right now, that pressure itself is a red flag. Liking and attractiveness, exploitation, uses your tendency to comply with requests from people you like or find attractive. Manipulators invest in making you like them before making requests. They find commonalities, give compliments, mirror your behavior, and present themselves attractively. Sales training explicitly teaches relationship building as a sales technique. Romantic scammers use attraction to override victims' judgment. The defense is separating whether you like someone from whether their request is reasonable. You can like someone and still say no. You can find someone attractive and still critically evaluate their proposals. Fear exploitation activates your threat detection systems to impair rational thinking. Manipulators create fear of loss, failure, judgment, or harm to make you comply with their proposed solution. Political manipulation, scams, and high-pressure sales all rely heavily on fear activation. If you do not act now, something terrible will happen. If you do not buy this protection, you will be vulnerable. Fear makes you accept solutions you would reject if calm. The defense is recognizing fear activation and deliberately pausing to allow rational thinking to re-engage. Most feared outcomes are either less likely than claimed or less catastrophic than implied. Guilt exploitation leverages your conscience against you. Manipulators frame their wants as your obligations. They present your boundaries as selfishness. They reinterpret your reasonable choices as harmful to them. Guilt is a useful emotion when you have actually violated your own values. Guilt is manipulation when someone else is manufacturing it to control your behavior. The defense is distinguishing between genuine guilt over real wrongdoing versus manufactured guilt over declining unreasonable requests. Pity exploitation presents the manipulator as victim deserving special treatment or resources. They emphasize their suffering, their disadvantages, or their victimization to obligate you to help them or excuse their behavior. Some people do genuinely need help, but manipulators use victim status strategically to avoid accountability and extract resources. The defense is recognizing that genuine need deserves compassion, but does not erase personal responsibility or eliminate boundaries. You can feel sympathy while still maintaining reasonable limits on what you will provide. Gaslighting is manipulation of your perception of reality itself. Manipulators contradict your memory, deny things they said or did, and claim you are too sensitive or crazy when you question them. Over time, this makes you doubt your own perceptions and rely on the manipulator's version of reality. Gaslighting is particularly insidious because it undermines your ability to trust your own judgment. The defense is keeping records of important conversations, trusting your own memory and perceptions, and seeking objective third-party perspectives when someone consistently claims your reality is wrong. Intermittent reinforcement creates addiction to manipulator approval. Early in relationships, manipulators provide consistent positive attention. Once you are invested, they become unpredictable, sometimes warm and sometimes cold. This inconsistency creates anxiety and intensifies your efforts to regain the early positive attention. Intermittent reinforcement is more powerful than consistent reinforcement. Like gambling, the unpredictable reward schedule keeps you hooked. The defense is recognizing that relationships should not require you to constantly work for basic respect and consistency. Triangulation involves bringing third parties into relationship dynamics in manipulative ways. The manipulator might play two people against each other, share information to create jealousy or competition, or invoke opinions of others to pressure you. They create confusion about who said what and use others as weapons without those people knowing they are being used. The defense is insisting on direct communication. If someone claims someone else has an opinion about you, talk directly to that person rather than accepting the manipulator's report. Moving goalposts involves changing expectations after you have met them. You complete what was asked. Then the manipulator adds new requirements or claims you did not understand what they wanted. This keeps you perpetually striving without ever satisfying them. The defense is getting clear, written agreements about expectations and holding people to original agreements when they attempt to change them retroactively. Love bombing involves overwhelming someone with attention, affection, and promises in the early stages of a relationship. This creates intense attachment quickly, making the target vulnerable to later manipulation. When someone seems too good to be true, invests too intensely, too quickly, and makes you the center of their world immediately, proceed with extreme caution. Genuine relationships build progressively. Love bombing is manipulation. Information control involves strategically managing what you know to shape your perception and decisions. Manipulators share selected information while withholding context that would change your interpretation. They time revelations strategically. They frame information in ways that lead to their desired conclusions. The defense is asking questions, seeking additional sources, and recognizing that you might not have complete information, especially when someone has incentive to shape your perception. Chapter 14, The Intuition Calibration Protocol. You have probably had experiences where you felt something was wrong about a person or situation, but could not articulate why. You might have dismissed these feelings as irrational or paranoid. But intuition is not mystical. It is your unconscious mind processing information faster than your conscious awareness can track. The challenge is that intuition can be either remarkably accurate or completely wrong, depending on whether it is based on genuine pattern recognition or on prejudice and fear. Learning to calibrate your intuition, to know when to trust it and when to question it, is the final piece of reading people accurately. Intuition works through pattern matching. Your brain has stored thousands of interactions and observations throughout your life. When you encounter a new situation, your unconscious mind rapidly compares it to stored patterns and generates a feeling about whether something is safe, dangerous, trustworthy, or suspicious. This happens in milliseconds, far faster than conscious analysis. When your intuition is based on genuine expertise and extensive experience with similar situations, it can be extraordinarily accurate. Expert clinicians often know a patient is seriously ill before test results confirm it. Experienced investigators often know someone is lying before they can articulate exactly what signals revealed it. Your unconscious pattern recognition picks up configurations of subtle signals that would take conscious analysis much longer to identify. However, intuition can also be wildly inaccurate when it is based on limited experience, cultural stereotypes, or evolutionarily programmed fears that are not relevant to modern contexts. Your brain evolved to be suspicious of outgroup members and unfamiliar situations because in ancestral environments, unfamiliar often meant dangerous. But in modern diverse societies, this evolutionary programming can generate false alarms based on someone's appearance, accent, or cultural background, rather than actual threat signals. The key to calibrating intuition is understanding when it is likely to be accurate versus when it is likely to mislead you. Intuition is most reliable when you have extensive experience with similar situations, when your gut feeling is about behavior rather than appearance, when multiple subtle signals align to create the feeling rather than a single salient feature, and when your feeling is specific rather than vague. Intuition is least reliable when you lack experience with the type of situation or person, when your feeling is based primarily on appearance, group membership, or a single characteristic, when you are currently anxious or stressed, which makes your threat detection overactive, and when your feeling is vague, unease, without any identifiable basis. To improve intuition accuracy, practice articulating what your gut feeling is based on. When you feel something is off about a person or situation, pause and ask yourself, what specifically triggered that feeling? Was it something they said, the way they said it, their body language, an inconsistency you noticed? Often, bringing the basis of your intuition into consciousness reveals whether it is legitimate pattern recognition or unfounded bias. If you can identify specific behaviors or signals that concern you, your intuition is probably accessing real information. If you cannot identify anything specific, and the feeling is just based on who the person is rather than what they are doing, your intuition is probably unreliable. Deliberately testing your intuition builds calibration over time. When you have a gut feeling about someone, make a prediction about them, and then observe whether your prediction proves accurate. Keep informal track of your hits and misses. This feedback loop helps your brain learn which patterns are actually predictive and which are false signals. Be especially careful to notice your false alarms and false negatives. When you distrusted someone who turned out to be trustworthy, what cues did you misread? When you trusted someone who betrayed you, what warning signs did you miss? This analysis refines your pattern recognition. Distinguish between anxiety and intuition. Anxiety is generalized fear that makes everything feel threatening. Intuition is specific concern about particular signals. If you feel uneasy around most people or in most unfamiliar situations, you are experiencing anxiety rather than intuition. Anxiety needs management through stress reduction, not validation through avoidance. True intuition is selective. You feel fine in most situations, but something specific triggers concern. Your gut knows the difference between actual danger signals and general unfamiliarity. Learn to recognize when your threat response is activating appropriately versus when it is overreacting. Combine intuition with analysis rather than relying on either alone. Your gut feeling directs your attention to something worth examining. Then use the analytical frameworks from earlier chapters to investigate what your intuition detected. Maybe your unconscious noticed micro-expressions of contempt that your conscious mind did not register. Maybe you picked up voice tone changes that signaled deception. Your intuition says investigate further. Your analysis determines what specifically concerns you. Share intuitions appropriately, but not as facts. In professional contexts, you might say, I have some concerns we should explore, rather than I have a bad feeling about this person. Frame intuition as hypothesis worth testing, rather than certain conclusion. This gets your concerns taken seriously, while maintaining intellectual humility about the limits of gut feelings. Respect others' intuition while maintaining critical thinking. If someone you trust says they have concerns about a person or situation, take their intuition seriously as signal worth investigating. But do not automatically accept their conclusion. They might be picking up real warning signs, or they might be responding to their own biases and anxieties. Investigate the specific basis of their concern. Build your experiential database deliberately. Your intuition improves as you accumulate more experiences and observe outcomes. Seek diverse interactions with many different types of people in various contexts. The broader your experience, the more patterns your brain can recognize, and the fewer false alarms from simple unfamiliarity. Pay attention to outcomes and learn from mistakes. When relationships or business deals go badly, analyze what early warning signs were present that you missed or ignored. When things go well with someone you initially distrusted, examine what led to your initial misreading. This deliberate learning accelerates intuition development. Understand that perfect accuracy is impossible. Even highly calibrated intuition will sometimes be wrong because humans are complex and situations change. The goal is not perfection. The goal is being right more often than chance and catching enough genuine warning signs to protect yourself from serious harm while not being so suspicious that you miss positive opportunities. Trust yourself more as your calibration improves. Early in developing these skills, you might doubt yourself frequently. As you accumulate evidence that your pattern recognition is becoming more accurate, you can trust your intuitions more confidently. You will learn to distinguish the feeling of real concern from the feeling of unfounded anxiety. This self-knowledge is valuable because it allows you to act on intuition appropriately without either dismissing important warnings or seeing threats everywhere. Remember that intuition works both directions, just as your gut can warn you about danger or deception. It can also signal opportunity and trustworthiness. When you feel drawn to someone or sense that a situation has positive potential, that intuition also deserves attention. The same pattern recognition that identifies threats can identify allies and opportunities. Chapter 15. The Ethical Framework for Reading People. With the powerful skills you have learned throughout this system, you might wonder about the ethics of reading people without their knowledge or consent. Is it manipulative to analyze someone's micro-expressions and body language? Is it invasive to decode their personality without asking? These are important questions that deserve serious consideration. The ethics of reading people depend entirely on your intentions and how you use the information. These skills can be used to help or to harm, to build genuine connection or to exploit vulnerability. The difference lies in your values and choices. The ethical foundation begins with recognizing that you are already reading people constantly. You naturally notice facial expressions, interpret tone of voice, and form impressions of others. The skills in this system simply make you better at something you are doing anyway. You are becoming conscious and systematic about processes that were previously unconscious and haphazard. Reading people ethically means using your understanding to navigate relationships more skillfully, to communicate more effectively, and to protect yourself from harm. It does not mean manipulating others or using private information against them. The first ethical principle is respect for autonomy. Understanding someone better does not give you the right to control them. You use your insights to inform your own choices about how to interact, not to override their free will. When you recognize that someone is uncomfortable with a topic, ethical use means respecting that boundary, not pushing harder, because you know they are uncomfortable. When you detect that someone is attracted to you, ethical use means factoring that into your behavior to avoid leading them on or exploiting their feelings. The second ethical principle is honesty in your own communication. Just because you can detect deception in others does not mean you should deceive them. Your ability to read people should make you more honest, not less, because you understand how damaging deception is to relationships. Use your skills to be more genuine in your own expression. When you understand that people pick up on incongruence between words and nonverbal signals, let that knowledge motivate you to align your communication channels. Say what you mean. Express emotions authentically. Be the person you want others to be with you. The third ethical principle is proportionate response to what you observe. If you detect minor deception about something inconsequential, the ethical response might be simply noting it mentally rather than confronting the person. Not every lie needs to be challenged. People use small social deceptions constantly to maintain harmony and spare feelings. If you detect serious deception about something that affects you significantly, then confrontation or protective action is appropriate. Calibrate your response to the magnitude and consequence of what you have detected. The fourth ethical principle is confidentiality about your observations. When you notice things about someone, especially vulnerable or embarrassing things, keep that information private unless you have genuine reason to share it. Someone's anxiety, their attraction to another person, or their insecurity about their competence is not entertainment or gossip material. Treat the information you gather through observation with the same discretion you would want others to use about information they gather about you. The fifth ethical principle is combining understanding with compassion. When you can see through someone's facade to their insecurity, fear, or pain, respond with kindness rather than exploitation. Your ability to read people should make you more empathetic, not more cynical. Yes, people hide their true feelings. Often they hide vulnerability and suffering. When you can see past the mask, use that knowledge to be more gentle and supportive, rather than to judge or take advantage. The sixth ethical principle is maintaining appropriate boundaries, even when you can see past them. Just because you can tell that someone wants to discuss something they are avoiding does not mean you should force that discussion. Just because you can see someone's attraction does not mean you should acknowledge it or act on it if doing so would be inappropriate given the relationship context. Respect the boundaries people establish, even when you can see what lies behind them. Some people are concerned that learning to read people will make them manipulative or Machiavellian. This concern is understandable but misplaced. These skills are tools. Tools can be used constructively or destructively. A hammer can build a house or break a window. The tool itself is neutral. Your character determines how you use it. In fact, ethical people benefit more from these skills than unethical people because understanding others better helps you avoid accidentally causing harm. Recognize when someone needs help they are not asking for. Communicate in ways that actually reach people rather than talking past them. And build genuine trust through understanding and responding to people's actual needs. Manipulative people already try to read others, but often do so poorly. because they project their own manipulative mindset onto everyone. They assume others are as dishonest and self-serving as they are, which leads to misreading people who are actually genuine. Your ethical use of these skills will generally lead to more accurate reading than a manipulator's cynical projections. Consider the alternative to developing these skills. Without them, you are more vulnerable to deception and manipulation, less able to help people who are suffering silently, more likely to misunderstand others and damage relationships through miscommunication, and less effective in navigating the complex social world you inhabit. Ignorance is not more ethical than knowledge. Remaining unskilled at reading people does not make you more virtuous. It just makes you more vulnerable and less effective. What matters is what you do with knowledge. There are also situations where reading people carefully is not just ethical, but morally necessary. Parents need to read their children to know when something is wrong. Managers need to read employees to identify problems and provide support. Therapists and counselors must read clients to help effectively. Security professionals must read people to identify genuine threats. In these roles, the failure to read people accurately would be negligence. Some people you encounter will be genuinely dangerous. They will have harmful intentions toward you or others. In these situations, your ability to recognize warning signs early protects you and potentially protects others. There is nothing unethical about protecting yourself from harm by recognizing threat signals. The ethical question is not whether to read people, but how to use what you see. Build relationships based on genuine understanding rather than assumption and projection. Protect yourself from those who would harm you. Help those who are suffering even when they cannot ask for help directly. Communicate in ways that actually connect rather than talking past each other. Navigate conflicts with understanding of what is really at stake for everyone involved. These are all ethical uses of the ability to read people accurately. Be transparent when appropriate about your observations. In close relationships, you might share what you are noticing. I sense that you are worried about something. Do you want to talk about it? This kind of transparency builds intimacy and shows that you are using your perceptiveness to support rather than to manipulate. In professional contexts, you might frame observations as questions. I am getting the sense that this proposal concerns you in some way. What aspects should we discuss further? This invites explicit communication while demonstrating that you are paying attention. Continuously examine your own motivations. Before using information you have gathered by reading someone, ask yourself whether your intended action serves good purposes. Am I trying to help this person or help myself at their expense? Am I respecting their dignity and autonomy? Would I want someone to use similar information about me in this way? These questions keep you honest about your ethics. Accept that reading people accurately will sometimes show you things you wish you had not seen. You might recognize that someone you care about is lying to you. You might see that someone you work with has contempt for you. You might detect that a relationship is dying even though no one has said so explicitly. This knowledge can be painful, but it is better than living in ignorance and being blindsided later. Truth, even difficult truth, allows you to make informed choices. Finally, remember that being good at reading people does not make you superior to others. It is a skill, like any other skill. Some people are naturally better at it due to temperament and experience. Others can develop it through learning and practice. But skill at reading people does not correlate with moral worth or with overall intelligence. Stay humble. You will misread people sometimes. You will miss signals. You will make false assumptions. Accept correction gracefully when someone tells you that you misunderstood them. Acknowledge the limits of your knowledge. Treat your readings as hypotheses to be tested rather than certain conclusions. This humility makes you more accurate over time and prevents the arrogance that would make you insufferable to others. Use your skills to make the world slightly better. When you understand people more accurately, you can respond to them more appropriately. You can offer support that actually helps rather than support that misses the mark. You can build trust through demonstration that you truly understand. You can resolve conflicts by addressing what is really at issue rather than arguing about surface positions. You can protect the vulnerable by recognizing exploitation and intervening. You can build teams and communities that work because you understand what different people need and can bring their strengths together effectively. These are all positive contributions that benefit others as well as yourself. Conclusion: becoming someone who truly sees. You have now learned a comprehensive system for reading people with extraordinary accuracy. You understand the science of deception detection. You know how to decode facial expressions, body language, and vocal patterns. You can rapidly assess personality. You recognize manipulation techniques. You have calibrated your intuition and established an ethical framework for using these powerful skills. But knowing these techniques is just the beginning. True mastery comes from consistent practice and application until these skills become second nature. In the beginning, reading people consciously will feel effortful. You will have to think about what you are observing and deliberately apply frameworks to interpret behavior. This is normal. This is how all skill acquisition works. With practice, the conscious effort decreases and the skills become increasingly automatic. You will find yourself noticing micro-expressions without trying. You will intuitively sense when someone is uncomfortable or deceptive. You will automatically calibrate your communication style to match different personality types. The transition from conscious application to unconscious competence typically takes months of regular practice. During this development period, focus on one or two skills at a time rather than trying to apply everything simultaneously. Perhaps spend a week focused specifically on noticing baseline deviations. Then spend time practicing vocal analysis. Then work on rapid personality assessment. This focused practice builds skills more effectively than trying to observe everything at once. Practice in low-stakes situations first. Use casual conversations with strangers, television shows, or public observations to develop your skills before applying them in high-stakes situations where accuracy matters greatly. This allows you to build confidence and calibration without serious consequences for mistakes. Keep a journal of your observations and predictions. Write down what you noticed about someone and what you predicted about their character or intentions. Then note whether your predictions proved accurate. This creates the feedback loop necessary for continuous improvement. Review your errors carefully to understand what you misread and why. As your skills develop, you will notice yourself becoming more socially effective in ways that might surprise you. Conflicts that once seemed intractable become resolvable because you can see past surface disagreements to underlying needs. Negotiations become more successful because you can read the other party's actual priorities and concerns. Relationships deepen because you respond to what people actually feel rather than just what they say. You will also likely become somewhat disillusioned as you see through social masks more clearly. You will recognize that many interactions involve performance and strategy rather than authenticity. You will see the selfishness, insecurity, and deception that people work hard to conceal. This can be discouraging if you allow it to make you cynical. The antidote to cynicism is remembering that everyone engages in impression management and social performance to some degree. This is not necessarily dishonesty. It is social navigation. People hide vulnerability to protect themselves. They conceal negative emotions to maintain relationships. They perform confidence to meet social expectations. Most of this is not malicious. It is adaptive behavior in complex social environments. You will also see genuine goodness more clearly. When someone is authentically kind, you will recognize it. When someone is truly honest, you will appreciate it. When someone shows real courage in being vulnerable, you will value it. Your ability to distinguish genuine virtue from performance makes authentic goodness more precious when you encounter it. Perhaps the most valuable outcome of mastering these skills is the freedom it provides. You are no longer at the mercy of others' deceptions and manipulations. You can see through social games and choose whether to participate. You can identify trustworthy people and build your closest relationships with them. You can recognize threats early and protect yourself before harm occurs. This freedom allows you to engage with the world from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. You can be open and generous because you trust your ability to recognize when someone is taking advantage. You can give people chances because you will notice quickly if they are untrustworthy. You do not have to approach everyone with suspicion because you know you will detect warning signs if they appear. Remember that these skills serve you best when combined with other forms of wisdom and knowledge. Reading people accurately tells you what is but not necessarily what you should do about it. That requires judgment, values, and strategic thinking. A comprehensive approach to navigating life successfully includes reading people accurately, understanding yourself clearly, developing emotional intelligence and regulation, learning the substantive knowledge relevant to your goals, building practical skills for implementation, and cultivating wisdom about when to engage and when to withdraw. Reading people is one crucial piece of this larger puzzle. Every human being you encounter is a complex individual with their own history, motivations, fears, and dreams. The skills you have learned allow you to see more of that complexity more quickly. Use that vision to build a life of greater connection, greater effectiveness, and greater contribution. See people truly. Understand them deeply. Respond to them wisely. This is how you move through the world with eyes wide open, no longer naive, but not yet cynical, informed by truth, but guided by values. This is how you become someone who truly sees, and who uses that sight to make everything you touch slightly better. The choice is yours. The knowledge is now yours. What you do with it will define not just how well you read others, but who you become in the process. Choose wisely, practice diligently, live ethically, and never stop learning from every person you encounter. Each one has something to teach you if you know how to see it.